I was on my walk today, down to the bridge again. The bridge is great because it's only 15 minutes away, and if there wasn't like a checkpoint, I would just keep going. So I know when I reach the bridge, it's time to come back, and that's my 30 minutes walk for the day. Anywho, I was on my walk to the bridge, and I noticed all along the side of the road there were daffodils. They'd bloomed, they'd blossomed, and it was really pretty. It's nice to see some color in spring again. I don't know what it's like where you are. I know a lot of people have snow. Some of my friends, like you see the posting about, 3 or 4 feet of snow. Like, it's April, what's going on? But even here, like, some days are colder than others, so the weather doesn't really know what it's doing. But it's nice to see some more green coming back. Nice to see some flowers coming out. Nice to see the animals and hear the birds. However, the trees aren't buying it. Those are still, well, a few of the trees here actually are starting to get some green on them, but down by the river, the trees don't have any foliage on them yet. And it made me realize that there's something to be said for patience and ancient wisdom. Patience and ancient wisdom. Two things sorely lacking in today's world, where we want everything yesterday, and we all think we know it all, and we don't. So it made me realize that we should probably be more mindful when it comes to exercising patience. Because patience is one of those things we hear about a lot. People say, good things come to those who wait, or patience is a virtue. Waiting is a good thing, right? But we don't want to wait. We don't want to be patient, especially when we're younger. When we're younger, we're in such a hurry to grow up and to become adults. And what fools we are to do that. I can tell you young people, it's not easy being a grown up. Please don't be in a rush to grow up. But yeah, patience. And it made me realize that some of the biggest problems, if not all the biggest problems I've ever experienced in life, they've come from a lack of patience and me rushing headfirst into something that I was not prepared for, or that other people around me were not prepared for. And it made me realize, Paddy, you need to focus on patience. You need to learn patience. And it all comes back to slowing down. Slowing down, embracing a slower way of life, and not getting caught up in all the social media, the technology, artificial intelligence, the rat race, the crazy stuff in the world, the news, the media, all the madness. And sometimes when you're caught up in all that, it erodes your patience, if you have any. And it becomes difficult to display or exercise patience. So I want to take a step back from a lot of that stuff. And one way I'm doing that is by putting these videos out. It helps me slow down, stop, think, talk. And I'm not going to always say the right thing. That's not what this is for. This is for me to process what's in my head, in the hopes that it'll help someone with similar thoughts in their head process what's going on for them. It's definitely not going to be for everyone, I can tell you that. But if it can help one person through all this, it'll be worth it. So patience and ancient wisdom. See, ancient wisdom by its very nature communicates this idea of patience also. The slow passing of time, the slow maturing of a tree, for example. A tree doesn't grow overnight. In fact, sometimes when we force trees to grow too quickly, it creates problems for the land and the soil and for the trees themselves. They aren't able to take root properly, a gust of wind comes along, it's very windy here today, for example, and the new forest just falls over. We see a lot of it around the north coast actually. It's very gusty and windy up the north coast. There is not a lot of shelter from the wind. And we see a lot of the younger forests and the wood farms, and loads of the trees tend to be blown over. Whole sections of forest have fallen over because it sometimes creates a cascading effect, like a domino effect. And it's sad that we're trying to force trees to grow so quickly. When we try to grow too quickly, when we try to progress too quickly, when we try to become too wise too fast, sometimes that can make us fall. And sometimes that can make us fall into other people. So we're not just hurting ourselves, but we're hurting the people around us. And that could be the people we love. It could be our partner, our kids, our friends, our family. So patience, taking it slow, not trying to get too far ahead of yourself. Not trying to get too far ahead, full stop, since that's what everyone's so preoccupied with, trying to get ahead. Ancient wisdom. We tend to take a dump on ancient wisdom a lot these days in favor of new age wisdom or culture or whatever you want to call it, philosophy, I don't know. We see that a lot in academia, especially in the Western world. And we've lost our way a lot because we've turned our backs on ancient wisdom. The thing is, if you're in a forest and you see an ancient oak that has been growing for thousands of years, it's a beautiful, grand, majestical specimen of a tree with a huge bough, huge branches, broad leaves. It's very healthy. It's an ecosystem in its own right? It supports life. It's beautiful. It grows all this fruit. There are probably thousands of insects, bacteria, and small critters living in that tree and around that tree and enjoying its shade, its shelter, and the protection it offers against the elements, and also the food it produces. Then you have a pine tree, which has been growing in 10, 15 years. And you can see the roots. They're kind of like sticking out from the surface because it hasn't taken root properly. And they're rather than be long roots, they're stunted. And this tree is very tall, but it's also very narrow. And it looks like a tree that could be blown over quite easily. Which of those two trees would you rely on if you needed a tree, say for shelter? Say you had to climb up a tree in a storm, right? Another allegory for life. A big storm in life comes along, you have to choose between two trees. Which one do you want? The ancient, tried and tested grand oak, or the spindly pine that looks like it's going to fall over in any second? I know which tree I would want. And often I feel like that's what we've done with ancient wisdom. We have this ancient oak with all of the wisdom and the knowledge and the tried and tested things. We have this sprightly new young sapling doing its thing. And the sapling is growing too quickly. It's being forced to grow fast because we want everything yesterday, right? And it doesn't look very stable. Yet, when the storm comes along, we go, sapling, save us! Because the sapling is loud and noisy, and it's like, come over here, we have all the answers. And then we climb up the sapling, or we hunker under it for shelter, and then it falls on top of us and crushes us, and we wonder why. And the grand old oak over there, it's just sitting there, without a care in the world, doesn't even feel the storm. So, maybe that's something to consider when it comes to ancient wisdom, is when we're looking for answers, maybe we shouldn't always look to the future. Maybe we shouldn't always look to the now. Maybe we shouldn't always look to the last 20 years. Maybe we should be looking 200 years ago, 2,000 years ago, 20,000 years ago. I don't know. I think there's a lot to be said for patience and ancient wisdom. I think we have turned our back on both those things. And I think the world is suffering for it. But hey, I'm just an Irish guy, living on the Emerald Isle, processing his thoughts, talking to you good people on the internet. So what do I know? Something to think about in the week ahead. Patience and ancient wisdom. Two things we could be doing with an awful lot more these days. Until next time.